Okay, this chapter, chapter 2, is starting to then look at building from the previous chapter's primary topic, which was scarcity choices, and then looking at how those scarcity choices are measured. They're measured with the opportunity cost, putting that all together into a economic model. The economic model being one of the production possibilities frontier. So, what we're going to look at in this chapter, we're going to look at two things. We're going to look at the production possibilities frontier model, and then we're going to look at the circular flow, the flow of goods and services, of labor, of capital in the economy as a whole. So production possibilities frontier and circular flow diagram. So let's start with the production possibilities frontier. With the production possibilities frontier, when you plot that out, and it's typically production possibilities frontier is usually represented by its acronym of PPF. The production possibilities frontier tells us the maximum production given certain resources, certain labor, certain amounts of capital, certain technology. So basically what we do is we measure out what would be if we were to use all of the resources, the labor, that would be the population, the capital, and then the technology. If all of that was combined, what would be the maximum amount of production of goods and services that you could have with these inputs to output? That's what the frontier is looking at. Now, what we would then have is a graph where you could have good 1 and good 2. So this is going to be then a two-good economy. Only two goods are being produced, goods 1 and good 2, and so we're using all of these resources to produce just these two goods. Now, the question is what does that slope look like? Well, it can actually have three different shapes. It could either be linear, it can be increasing, or it can be decreasing. And these different slopes of the frontier that has not been drawn yet, these all refer to actually the opportunity cost. How is the opportunity cost for good 1 changing as the quantity of good 2 changes? So the opportunity cost of good 1 is going to be less production of good 2. It's going to be what we sacrifice. The production of good 2, we're going to have to sacrifice the production of good 1. Now, the frontier itself, right? These are numbers, right? This is going to be like 50 units of good 1, 100 units of good 1, right? Let's just say 50. I'm just making up these numbers here. If it has a linear production possibilities frontier, then what we simply do is we draw a straight line between the two. Now what that frontier tells us is that the trade-off of good 1 for good 2 or good 2 for good 1 is constant at all points along the frontier. If we're on the frontier, on the line, I always give up the same amount of good 1 for good 2. Let's say that the trade-off is equal to -2. That would mean that I give up 2 units of good 2 for 1 unit of good 1, right? So that would mean negative delta, the triangle will mean changes, or you could call delta. That the quantity of good 2 falls by 2, and that the quantity of good 1 increases by 1. Right, so this is falling by 2, change in quantity of good 2, decreases by 2. The quantity of good 1 is increasing, and it's increasing by 1. So the slope is the same at all points along the frontier. Now, let's kind of erase this here and draw this a little bit bigger. Sorry for the low technology of this whole endeavor, but it does the trick, doesn't it? Let's make this rather big here. Quantity of good 1, quantity of good 2, and I had a linear production possibilities frontier, let's say at 50 there and 100 there. Okay, so 50 units of good 1 here, 100 units of good 2. Right, those are my intercepts. Now if I'm on the frontier, we basically said that in this case, in this linear production possibilities frontier, that the trade-off is always the same. This is falling by 2, this is increasing by 1. Just as an example here for the numbers. Now, to get more of good 1, to get one more unit of good 1, I have to give up good 2. When you're on the frontier, getting more of one good always requires a sacrifice of the other good. Always. But, what if we were below the frontier? What if instead I was at point C? What does point C represent? Point C represents that you're not using all of the resources and technology for the maximum production of the products. Point C would represent a point of inefficiency. These points on the frontier are all efficient. In fact, they actually have a specific name. They're called productively efficient. They're productively efficient because more of one good always requires a sacrifice of the other. These points are not productively efficient. I can actually get more of good 1 without giving up good 2. Or I can get more of good 2 without giving up good 1. Or I can get more of both goods. Point C represents a productively inefficient point. This represents an efficient point. A point outside the frontier is impossible. We cannot produce at this point here that would exceed the resources that we have. Okay, this is a bit of an extreme situation that you would have a constant trade-off. Rather, it's more likely that one would have increasing or decreasing opportunity costs. I'm going to pick up that topic with the second part of this video.